Hi guys, it's Rory here and welcome to the Football Heritage Podcast. Hope you're enjoying everything that our fantastic podcast has to offer so far this year. Firstly, I'm here to tell you that our brand new patron exclusive feed, the Football Heritage Extra, is now live. You can subscribe for £3 per month and that gives you access to an additional exclusive podcast every Thursday. We've designed our patron exclusive content to be a wee bit more casual, more niche and full of exclusive insights and interviews with our friends, contributors and other people working within football. Links to subscribe are in all of our episodes, show notes as always. Looking forward to seeing you over there. Secondly, if you enjoyed last week's show, it would mean the world to us if you could leave a review on Apple and Spotify, or if you're listening on YouTube, a comment and a like. It really helps the algorithm pick us up and does so much for pushing us in front of new listeners every week. Please remember as well to leave a comment on our episodes on whichever platform you're listening on. One of our favourite things is engaging with you guys and being able to speak with you about the conversations that we're having every week. Lastly, please remember to visit our website to read our articles and see what other projects we're working on at the moment. Or if you like, come and join us on our social media for daily posts and content related to the heritage of football across the world. We're always up for a chat, so if you have any questions, suggestions or feedback, feel free to DM us on any of our socials or email us at hello@footballheritage.co.uk. I think that's about everything that I need to plug at the moment. Thanks once again for listening. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to the Football Heritage Podcast. I'm your host Rory Bryce and today I'm joined first of all by Andy Walton.
Hiya.
Good to have you on, Andy. Thanks for joining us. I'm also joined by Paul.
Hiya.
And I'm also joined by John Watkins.
Hiya.
It's great to have the three of you on. Thank you very much for joining me in this very sunny Scottish evening. I'm not sure how the weather is in Wales, but we've been getting the best of it recently. We're here tonight to talk about the most recent Welsh Cup winners, Caernarfon Town Football Club. I'm so excited to talk about this football club. The very first time I heard about them was through our episode with Ed Norville, which was in 2024, and about the rebrand that the club was going through. But since Andy reached out to us on LinkedIn with an aim of taking the club and talking about them on a podcast, the research that I've put into finding out about the club, it's just an absolutely fascinating team, and I'm so happy that they're the first club that we are going to be talking about from Wales on this podcast. Just before we kick things off properly, Andy, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your role within the club.
Yeah, so I'm Andy Walton. I volunteer with Caernarfon Town on the media team, and I'm also on the board, representing the media team on the board, really, and basically sort of lead the way in the way that we communicate our messages to the fans through social media. And I also operate a little bit on the ticketing side of things as well, because that kind of goes hand in hand with the socials of how we push tickets and push events and not just advertise things and make money, but actually push our sort of identity online. That's our main output.
Nice one. Thanks very much, Andy. Paul, your turn. Tell our listeners a little bit about you.
Yeah, I'm Paul Evans. I'm chairman of Caernarfon Town. Been a supporter since about 1983. Joined the club's board in about February 2010, and I've been chairman for the last 6 years. So my job primarily is to just steer the ship as well as I can.
You've been up doing that for a very long time as well, so I can imagine you must have seen your fair share of things within the club. John, last but not least, tell our listeners a little bit about you.
Yes, my name's John Watkins. I'm the club president. I've been president for the past 15, 16 years. I've been a fan since 42 years, since 1984. I've also been a director of the club and also match secretary as well, during our days in the Old Northern Premier League and our first seasons back in the Welsh pyramid system, in the League of Wales, as it was called then.
Fantastic. Such great experience. People who live and breathe the club and the town and the area and everything to do with the football club, including the recent success. What we'll find a lot of during this episode is, as Andy alluded to, this club is the heart of its community and vice versa. Many people within the community volunteer at the club and have spent countless hours making sure that the club has survived through many, many dark times, but also some great times as well, and I've had some great memories as a result of that. This is a club that is incredibly proud of its heritage, and one aspect to that which I love is that the club is Welsh speaking. It's a Welsh speaking club. The players all speak Welsh. We'll dig into that a little bit more later on as well. A lot of our listeners might see similarities with when we spoke with Callum Ferguson from the Alibi FA last year in that as well, but also the recent rebrand, which has really adopted a lot of local folklore, mythology and Welsh heritage. So we're going to be talking about the entire history of the club, but also what they've recently been doing to use heritage to actually connect a little bit more with their community. and really embody what it means to be from Caernarfon and be Welsh. I guess we're going to start right at the beginning. This is quite central to this story. It's not often that we actually start with this when we have our club history episodes, when we talk about different football clubs, but it is important to this story and quite central to the identity of, obviously, Caernarfon Town FC. Tell us a little bit about the history and etymology of Caernarfon, of Gwynedd, and the surrounding area and its place within the history of Wales.
I mean, Caernarfon is quite a famous town for tourism. It's got a big castle in the middle of it, so that's a lot of people would recognise Caernarfon from the castle. And I'm sure it's something we'll talk about later on with the badge change and how it used to look and how it now looks. But yeah, it's a town of about 10,000 people or so in Gwynedd in northwest Wales, and so it's relatively small. But that means for the football team, I suppose we're an important part of that town. Whether things are going good or going bad, it's quite central to conversations up and down the street and wherever you go, especially when they're going good. So, which is great at the moment. But yeah, I mean, in terms of history, it's traditionally but it still is a Welsh language stronghold. So that's a massive part of why people come here. Actually, they do come here to hear people speak Welsh, and it's one of the few towns in Wales where you will actually hear Welsh in every corner. You know, the one that always comes up all the time is the McDonald's drive-through. So people turn up here and they ask you what you want in Welsh, which nobody can believe, but yeah, it happens all the time. Yeah, so that's sort of part of the main identity, and you've got people of all walks of life basically speaking Welsh. I don't know the stat. I think it's 80% plus. It's a really solid Welsh speaking area. Yeah,
I think the first football team Caernarfon, a number of football teams have represented the town over the years. I think it was 1876 when the first club started in Caernarfon, and but different names, Caernarfon, Ionopolis, Caernarfon Athletic, Caernarfon United as well. And I think Caernarfon Town formed in 1937. So that was when Caernarfon Town started as such, and just playing local football in the local area, and as the days went by, on the North Wales coast.
Fantastic. And I'm presuming that you three are Welsh speakers as well. It was amazing for me going up to see Alaba v Cornwall, the Cornish equivalent in the Celtic Nations Cup in Inverness last year. Obviously, I'm from the Lowlands, so Gaelic is not a language that we are taught, let alone speak. And that was the first time I'd ever been around people who were all speaking Gaelic. And it was quite weird being in your own country but not having any idea what was going on. But it was nice at the same time because, these are languages that have to be championed, and I can imagine that it's the same with Caernarfon and Welsh. So I'm presuming in that case that obviously being one of the places that is still predominantly Welsh speaking, I'm guessing that the club has always been a predominantly Welsh speaking club. Of course, all the players speak Welsh without necessarily championing it through the years. It was just, Caernarfon is a Welsh speaking place, the club are a Welsh speaking club.
Yeah, it's one of the things we've always tried to do over the last 16 years. When the club nearly went bankrupt, late 2009, early 2010, I was part, and John also was part of a team that sort of took the club over, and just to save the club to finish off that season. Otherwise, we'd have probably disappeared, and we'd have come back in some kind of way, but we would have disappeared as Caernarfon Town at that time. So one of our objectives at the time was to make sure that we tapped into the Welshness of our town and our area. We had lots of success in the 80s with lots of players, a squad that was full of players from the Wirral area. And we reached the third round proper of the FA Cup in 1986-87. And many of those players were from the Wirral area. So I think the problem we had for the next 20 odd years or maybe more was that the club tried to, well, it seemed to me anyway as a supporter, that the club tried to replicate that success. So very few local players, you'd see very few local players playing for us. So as a result of that, and of course we weren't too successful either, the relationship between the club and the local people, the people of the town and the area, sort of diminished over the years. I think I'm right to saying that. We decided, in 2010 that would have to stop, and one of our policies has been since then to give the best local talent in the area the opportunity to play for the club, and that's really sort of helped us over the years to gain support and rebuild that relationship with local people. And I think probably that's one of the most important things we've done since sort of taking over in 2010. Since those years, I think John and I are the only two are still involved in the club since 2010. But the ethos has remained in that we're still trying to get as many young local players into that squad as we can, and we try to be as well speaking as we can on the field. But of course, off the field, we're all Welsh. So I think that's been a massive part of where we are now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's good to know that as well, because that heritage is what informs the club today. At the end of the day, that's what heritage is. It's the past that informs the present and will inform the future. It's interesting to know that this has always been the case, but whereas many clubs might diverge in this era that we have, modern football can be cutthroat at times, and clubs at every level of every pyramid, of every nation, often do things to cut corners and try and find ways to break into that kind of commercialised mould that a lot of football clubs find themselves into. So it's always good to hear a club going back to its roots almost, and really tapping into what made them who they are today as a way to reconnect with their community, where other clubs are quite happy to take their supporters for granted, take their communities for granted, or sell them down the river. So in terms of the rest of the club heritage and the symbolism, obviously the badge is something that we'll also touch on a little bit later on. Tell us about the former badge, what it looked like, and what aspects of Caernarfon that it actually embodied.
Well, I've got one in front of me here, actually, so this is handy. But it's very regal. Caernarfon is officially a royal town, whatever that means. Somebody once said that, so it's a royal town. Somebody's come in. Prince Charles, this is before my time, or King Charles he is now, was invested here. His investiture was here in 68, 69, yeah. So that happened here. So it's got a shield on it and a sort of the three feathers, the plume of feathers. It's got a crown and a sort of knight's helmet. It's very regal looking. But it's also got a yellow and a green, a yellow eagle and a green dragon on it, which is something which kind of formed the badge that came later on. And like you said, importantly, it says CPD, Club Pêl-droed Tref Caernarfon, which is Caernarfon Town Football Club. It's got it in English as well.
The centre part is the official emblem of the town council. I think it was in the early 90s. We as a club had to get permission by the town council to use it for Caernarfon Town Football Club. And then we've actually, we've added the Club Pêl-droed Caernarfon Town Football Club around it afterwards. But the centrepiece is the official emblem as such of the Caernarfon Town Council.
Mm. So in short, basically tying all this together, the football club and the town have went hand in hand since the club founded.
I think that'd be fair to say, yeah. And obviously we weren't around in these days, but it looks like they took the badge essentially and said, we'll just use that then. And it's stayed like that for a long time. The process more recently it's the first time I think it's ever really been looked at. I'm not sure if it's ever happened before that anyone's ever considered changing it. But over the last few years, we've been looking into it, and like you said, with Ed Norval and Ryan from the Deep Creative, so they are sort of they're our official creative partners, and we worked with them and all the fans. That was really important that the fans were part of the rebrand more than a part of it. They led it really, and we had many meetings over the space of 2 or 3 years, sort of along with sort of professional creatives, but ultimately taking ideas from the fans, because we definitely didn't want to just pay someone some money to make us a new badge that we thought was going to be good and say, there you go, because that would have been, it could have been awful. So, yeah, the fans definitely led the way on that.
Yeah, I completely understand that. So in terms of the history of the football club then, obviously the success that the club has felt has been, very recent, only within the last week or so, really. Tell us a little bit about the club history throughout its existence, because obviously we're going to get to a pretty important point where we had this issue with the Irate Eight, which Caernarfon Town was a part of, and the League of Wales. Tell us a little bit about the club history before that and its place within the Welsh football and landscape.
We've always, they've been, since its formation, been playing in Welsh leagues, a bit the local leagues and along the North Wales coast. In the 80s, or prior to that, 70s, the likes of Hill and Bangor City, they were playing in the English leagues, the pyramid system. And there was I think Caernarfon, we wanted to be part of that as well. And I think it was around late 70s, we applied to join the English system, and we were gained entrance into the Lancashire Combination League, as it was then. And gradually we worked ourselves up in promotion to the North West Counties League. And then I think it was 1985, gained promotion into the Northern Premier League, which was at the time, the sixth tier of the English system. So we're talking about 2 leagues below the Football League, the old Division 4. Then obviously we had our famous FA Cup run in 1986-87, where we beat Stockport County at home in the first round 1-0. In the second round, we got our own home against York City, or just in the previous couple of years before that, I think they'd beaten Arsenal, and they'd also played Liverpool as well in the Cup. So we got our own home against them. We drew 0-0, and at the replay at Spootham Crescent, York, we won 2-1. So that was a famous night for the club. And then our reward then in the third round, which was an open draw then, where the big clubs came in. And then I remember listening to the radio on a Monday dinner time when the draw was made. Caernarfon Town came out of the hats first, and we were drawn against number 3, I think, came out, and everybody had visions of Arsenal, Aston Villa, but it turned out to be Barnsley. So if you were, a low number, it was Arsenal 1, Aston Villa 2, whatever, but it turned out to be Barnsley. So another home draw. We drew 0-0 again, but lost 1-0 away at Oakwell in the replay. Interesting fact there was between the first match at Caernarfon and the time the replay was played, I think it's been postponed 3 or 4 times due to bad snow. But when we eventually played that match, we were the only non-league club left in the FA Cup that season. But fantastic memories and time for the club.
That's a good run. I mean, just generally speaking of memories, John, you must have some great stories from following the club over the years. Tell us a little bit about what it was like as a supporter following the club home and away.
Yeah, the FA Cup run was magic. They were special. We had lots of TV publicity. St John Greaves, who picked it up on their programme on a Saturday dinner time as well. We had good following as well going away from home. So we're talking, in the league then, the likes of Workington as well. Gateshead's lengthy trips, and we took a decent crowd, a bus full. Obviously depending where we played away. If you played in the Liverpool area, Manchester area, obviously you had more following there. Yeah, we have fantastic memories.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm guessing the reason that the club chose to apply to the English league system was due to the infrastructure of football in Wales at the time, and the club maybe had ambitions to go a little bit higher than that. Would that be fair to say?
Yes. There wasn't a national league then in Wales. It was a regionalised. The highest league then was the old Welsh Alliance League, which would have been Tier 3 now in standard, when the likes of Caernarfon participating in it. We had ambition to play at a higher level as such, so that's the reason why we applied to join the English system and the Lancashire Combination to begin with.
I understand. And of course, with the club playing in the English system, that is what led to the situation of the Irate Eight, with the FA Wales more or less trying to force Caernarfon and a number of other clubs to play in the Welsh setup.
Yes, I think it was around 89-90 when the FAW turned around and said they wanted to form a national league in Wales, and the reason for that was to protect the identity of the Welsh national team, because nations in Europe had national leagues, but Wales didn't, and there was a threat apparently that that could affect the existence of the Welsh national team. So we had at the time 11 Welsh clubs playing in the English system, and the FA said that the 3 Football League clubs, Cardiff City, Swansea City and Wrexham, could remain in the English pyramid system because they're full-timers. And then we had the FAW convened a meeting around 1990 at the Elephant and Castle Hotel in Newtown, where the other 8 clubs were invited. And the first thing the FAW said was that the new National League will commence with or without you. We as a club, we wanted to remain in the Northern Premier League. We didn't have any objection at all in the new National League being formed. All we wanted was just to carry on playing in the league we were in. So when they said the league, we'll carry on, without you, we're quite happy with that. But as time went by, more pressure has been put on the clubs, to try and get, to join the League of Wales. Merthyr Tydfil, who were playing in the Conference League at the time, the National League as it is now, they were given permission to remain in that league because as such was a 5th tier. So they were being classed the same as Wrexham, Cardiff and Swansea. So the Irate Eight became 7. Out of those 7, Newtown and Bangor City, they applied to join the League of Wales and were accepted. Rhyl also applied, but they missed the deadline. And they came back into the 2nd tier, the Cymru Lions League. So we were down to 4 clubs then, ourselves, Newport AFC and Barry. So what the FA did then was they banned us from playing our home games in Wales. But we wanted to remain in the English pyramid system. We had to become English clubs, and that's what the 4 clubs did. We became members of the Football Association, the English FA, and in our case, we became affiliated to the Manchester County FA and participated in our County Cup, which at the time then was the Manchester Premier Cup. Then for 2 seasons, 92, 93, 93, 94, Caernarfon Town played their home games at Caernarfon FC, Ashton and the Line in Manchester. Colwyn Bay played their first season in Northwich, Victoria, the 2nd season in Ellesmere Port. Newport AFC, they played their 2 seasons in Gloucester, in Gloucester City. And Barry, for 1 season, they played their home games at Worcester City. But after 1 season, they decided to come back to Wales to join the Welsh pyramid system, and they were eventually accepted into the South Wales one of the South Wales feeder leagues. So it's just the 3 of us remaining. So the 2 seasons we played in Manchester, we were getting gates. Again, we took a busload of fans to home matches, which was 120 miles away.
That's rough.
And that, did that every week for a home match. And sometimes our midweek evening match at home was on a Monday. So this was an hour there, you're travelling there on a Saturday for a home match, and again 2 days later for the midweek match. The reason it had to be on a Monday because that was the night Caernarfon Ashton played their home games. Because obviously if they played on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, there's several, the big Manchester clubs were playing home and other non-league clubs in the area. So by playing on a Monday night, they would draw better gates. So we had to abide by their midweek match day.
Obviously the FA Wales telling Welsh clubs, well, if you're going to play in the English system, then you're going to become English clubs. I mean, the implications of that are very clear. Must have been an incredibly tough time for the club, but also frustrating. And the argument that the clubs made was, well, we've played in this system for however many years, we have the right to stay here. Just must have been so frustrating to see the FA, who is claiming to be for Welsh clubs and trying to build an infrastructure, turn its back on football clubs like that.
Yeah, I was a supporter at the time, of course, not involved in the club at all. I was just a young man, really. I remember how disappointed we were as supporters, because we'd been going for years to the home matches, occasionally to the away matches, but you no longer had the visits you could no longer visit the Oval on midweek for midweek matches and Saturday afternoon matches. I don't know if this is true or wrong the word, but it was a disgrace, really. It was shocking, and thankfully the FAW is not the same body that it was then. We're lucky in that, some people don't think he's up to it. I personally think he's very good, but we're lucky to have somebody like Noel Mooney in charge now who gets things done. But at the end of it, he wants the Welsh clubs to succeed. So it just makes you question really what the hell was happening back in the early 90s with the FAW. What I do remember is there was an article in one of the papers, around this time. It was a national paper, not a local one. And I remember, it's awful for me to say this, but I'll say it anyway because this is how we felt at the time. There were pictures there was an article saying how old-fashioned and sort of like a relic from the past the FAW was at the time. And I remember there was a photo taken of their committee going to a meeting, and they had to go up some steps. They were so old and out of touch, really, that some had to be carried up the steps. Do you know what I mean? And that's not having a go at anybody, any of them. It's just 30 odd years ago, wasn't it? But it just shows that they needed new blood then. And I know the reason why they established the Welsh League, the League of Wales, as it was called then, and it was for a good reason to keep the identity of the national team. But what they did to the Irate Eight, as you say, was, in my opinion, an absolute disgrace. And I'll put it like this: it wouldn't happen today, would it?
I mean, the thing is as well, because you've got, like, obviously Gretna, when they were still around in their former club, they used to play in the English setup. You've got Berwick Rangers, who play in the Scottish non-league setup. You've got Derry City, who play in the League of Ireland, despite being based in the north of Ireland. You have so many examples of football clubs who play in league setups which aren't from their original nation, and sometimes a lot of it has nothing to do with like national politics or anything like that. Sometimes it does, yeah, sure, but for the most part it's clubs who want the ambitions of being able to climb up those leagues. And like you said, Paul, for the FAW to just turn around and say, well, if you're and I think that's the thing that John mentioned that sticks out for me. If you're going to play in England, you're going to be English clubs. Like, that's just disgraceful.
Yeah, I'd like to see them try now. To be honest, I wouldn't like to see them, but I don't think they'd be able to do it now.
Yeah. Eventually, though, John, the club did come back, and I guess that leads us into the 90s and early 2000s, where the club very nearly fell out of existence, and it was only down to fan protests and action that the club's actually still alive today.
Can I just mention one thing? Our last ever league match in the English system was away to Gretna. So the scenario there of Gretna being a Scottish team playing at home against Caernarfon Town, a Welsh team, in an English league. And to cap it off, it was refereed by a referee who was from Northern Ireland. Steve C, what his name was, but he lived in Liverpool, and he asked for to do that match. So as such, you had the home nations scenarios every match there. A Scottish team playing Welsh team at home in an English league with a Northern Ireland referee, and we won the match 1-0. So we left an eye.
That's incredible, though. But yeah, I mean, it's the intricacies of football, especially in Scotland, England, and Wales, that these things can happen. And I can imagine there was a number of other situations similar to that were thrown up as well. Tell us a little bit about the campaign to save the football club, and a little bit about the background to how the club came to be in such a precarious position in the first place. Because a lot of people don't know, or might not know, this side of the story. But I mean, to be fair, this really sets up how Caernarfon become and who they become over the next couple of decades, really into today.
Yeah, I can tell you the story about what's happened since 2010 because I've been on the board. But, I was a supporter before then. I'm sure John might be able to tell more. But what I do recall about that time, in the years leading up to that, is just dwindling interest in the club because of that policy of... It seemed, as a supporter, that there was a policy at the club. I'm sure there wasn't a policy, but it just happened that they were getting managers from the Wirral, that side of the country, and so we were sort of getting players that had no affinity to the area, and the supporters had no affinity to them. We might get one or two players every now and again who used to play for us, but on the whole, I think I'm right in saying this, John, most of the players at the time would be coming in from England to play for us.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah. Would you agree, John, that was one of the reasons that the club hit so many financial troubles?
Yes. I think we're trying to replicate the glory days of 86, 87, because the majority of players then, I think we had 4 Welsh players in the squad. All the others were from, the Wirral, Liverpool area. Other clubs as well up the coast, Colwyn Bay, Rhyl, Bangor City, they were going down the same road as well, importing players from across the border. So no, lots of the local talents, didn't have a chance as they're getting now, in those days.
I think we've been able to prove since then, over the last 16 years, there is really good talent in the area. Caernarfon is known as a hotbed of football. Anyway, it's a footballing town. It's a small town. I think it's about 11 or 12,000. I think, but you've got quite a large area as well. Lots of little villages. There's some good players everywhere here. So I definitely think that was one of the reasons. In the lack of interest, and of course, once you get a lack of interest, lack of income, the income affects the budget, and then the budgets would be going lower and lower, and that then will make the team struggle, the club struggle. That's, as far as I know, that's what happened.
It's interesting as well, because that's a sign that something's going deeply wrong, but it's also a sign that there's a malaise around the club, that the owners or the people that are in charge aren't willing to invest in the things to bring the club back to a stable position. Obviously, then the fans stepped in and stopped that from happening, because the club is so important to the town. But, when you start spiralling like that and there's a kind of sense that things aren't going to change here, that's when it becomes a real worry.
Yeah, but do you know what I feel now, looking back now, it's a few years ago now, but I don't think it was the owners at the time or the people running the club at the time who were not able to put money. I don't think it was that. I think they put in as much as they could.
Okay.
Because I know that one of the former chairmen, and I know them all, from that period. But the one I'm most friendly with, I'm still in contact with, sort of thing, and I wasn't on the board or anything. But I've heard stories of him paying all the budgets from his own pockets.
I'm with you.
So I don't think it was a case of them, not being prepared to put money in. It was just that. I think they couldn't put any more in than they were. And I think, if I'm right, Johnny, I think by the time the club sort of nearly went into bankrupt, I think there were only 2 board members, well, 1 chairman and 1 board member, maybe.
Yeah, 3 at the most, I think, wasn't it? Yeah.
So you can't run the club with aspiration. Well, you can't run the club with 3 people, I don't think, in charge, trying to do everything. But certainly a club in a footballing hotspot like Caernarfon that has aspirations, and where the supporters have aspirations. And, remember that most of us who supported the team at the time, we'd all seen this FA Cup run in the 80s. Those players are still heroes to me now. I remember meeting one of them, Ray Woods, who went on to play Coventry in the Premier League or the First Division. And I saw him a few years ago. He came to watch a match, and I was absolutely delighted to have a photo of them on the pitch. Yeah, I don't think it was just that problem. They went into a rut of trying to replicate the 80s, and they couldn't get out of it.
Yeah.
That was it, in my opinion.
Fair enough. And I guess if Caernarfon Town didn't exist, if after the bankruptcy they had been wound up completely and didn't come back, what would be your closest football club?
Well, I'd be going to watch a nearby village, but I don't know about the boys.
There are lots of little village teams down here, sort of the tier 3, tier 4, a couple of tier 5, which is, it's village football. It's great, for that, and it's got a value. I go to these teams sometimes where you pay £2 into a little tub of margarine and you have a cup of tea and you watch the game, and it's great. But the nearest Cymru Premier team be down the coast somewhere. Would it be? It might be Flint. Yeah, which is quite not close. It's about an hour away, so you'd be going quite away. Yeah, it would have had an effect.
And that's what I'm hearing though, is that the club folding just wasn't an option, and that's why the fans then stepped in to decide to do something about it.
Yeah, I think, it's before my time being around here, but because I'm from a different part of the country, and it's funny, a few of you have said it's a footballing hotbed, so I'm from the southwest of Wales, which is a rugby hotbed, so up here is completely different, and the stereotype, maybe, I don't know, Rory, how much you know about Wales, but people tend to think it's a rugby nation, but there are actually more football clubs than rugby clubs, even though there's been periods where they've been really good at rugby and not particularly good at football. And then over the last period, with the Euros and qualifying for the World Cup and everything, it's been more of a football success story. But around here, I don't think it's ever been a rugby hotbed. It's always football. And like you say, every little village has got its own team. And these are well-supported teams as well. There are teams here in the 3rd and 4th tiers that have a few hundred people watching them on a Saturday, which is great. But I think I'm right in saying that, and John and Paul will know more on this than me, but some of the fans stepped in and played for the team, didn't they, that season, so that they could finish the league?
Yes, because prior to the fans taking the club over 2 seasons before then, we had been relegated from the League of Wales, as it was then, down to Tier 2 of the Cymru Alliance, and we were still in free fall. We were in the relegation area then, in the bottom 3, and we knew we were going to be relegated. And then there was a restructuring of the league at the time, where I think normally 3 were going down, and during that season 7 were going, due to the Cymru Premier League as it is now being remodelled, and so we knew at that season we were going down, and then we found ourselves in financial difficulty, didn't we, Paul? Towards the end of the season, with about 9 games left, the club had a bill from the FAW to pay fines, and the money just wasn't there to pay the bill. Although everybody knew, that the club were struggling, it came as a shock, really, to find out that, it was in really deep water. So as a result of that, all the players obviously were being paid expenses. They were allowed to leave the club, and the manager as well, he left. We asked, in order for us to finish the season off, we asked the league if we can have 14 days to try and get a team together. Otherwise we'd have been, thrown out of the league. But they said, yes, we can do that, but we're only going to give it 10 days, I think it was. And within the 10 days there, we had appointed a manager and a team full of players as well, just to finish the season off. And they were all local players. I mean local as well, not, local, being they're all Caernarfon-based players. Players joining us from clubs in Tier 4 and Tier 5. 1 or 2 coming out of retirement. 1 or 2 had played for Caernarfon Town in the past. But turning up their boots, they came out of retirement to help us out. And we managed to finish the season off. We knew we were going to be relegated, but if the club had pulled out of the league, they've gone out of existence. If you wanted to start, playing football back, we'd have to start at the very bottom, which in our case would have been Tier 5, Caernarfon District League. So by getting a team full of local players together to finish the season off, that meant us obviously being relegated. But the following season, we were in Tier 3, the Welsh Alliance League. So that was much better than being in Tier 5, the Caernarfon District League. Our journey as a club, as it is now, started then.
Yeah, I think that's a good origin point for John the Johnny now, and that's what I was going to ask next. How does a club go from that to playing in Europe and winning a Welsh Cup?
In 16 years, we've won 13 trophies in total within 16 years. Maybe league championships, league cups, FAW trophy, a couple of European Scottish League Cup player finals, and obviously the big one last week, the Welsh Cup. We've done well. 13 cups in 16 seasons. It's good going, in my opinion.
I would agree.
Yeah, it's, I mentioned earlier on about our policy, our promise really, not just the policy, our promise really to use local talent, to give that platform to local players to play for us. And it all began from there. That was the catalyst to it, I think. And I think we were doing quite well and moving along quite nicely. And I don't know if you've heard of Nathan Craig. He was with Everton as a professional. He didn't quite make the first team, although he did have an appearance in the European game, I think. And he was looking for a club, and he came to us. He's also been a professional with Torquay, I think, as well. So we got him in. This is going back a few years ago. And this was part of the policy, big players coming in, local players. And we also got Darren Thomas, who is still with us, who's our captain. He's been our captain for the last few years. He's so good, we call him the Covey Messi. That's how good he is. And I think having those 2 players, and there were a few other local players as well, who have such high quality, that sort of galvanised the whole club and galvanised the supporters. So as we were moving back up the league, and we weren't paying silly money either, we were going after some players and they were asking, silly money to join us. So we would say no. And they were local players, but we would say no, we go for the players we can afford. I don't know how we did it, but we got Nathan Craig and Darren Thomas, and we've been after Darren for a long time. And so having those two players, and we stuck to our policy of the local players. Then when we got into the second tier, we had to really, by necessity, we had to get a few from further afield in to strengthen us. We just had to do it because I don't think you'd be able to get a successful team that's going to win the second tier in Wales with 11 players from one town. I don't think any town would be able to do that. Yeah, so we started getting some people in. Not many. We were still predominantly Welsh speaking on the field as well. Welsh managers, which was important because that's our whole, that's our culture, and that's what we are, a Welsh club. Most Welsh club in the world is what we think we are, and I think it's true. And so, by being quite frugal with our money and by getting the best local talents, we sort of progressed, and we eventually got into the Welsh Premier League. Now, we would never have been able to do that without the support of the local people, and we got that support because we were giving local players an opportunity. So I firmly believe we wouldn't be where we are now without the supporters. And the only way we could get them to begin with, after all the years of watching players from the Wirral play for us, the only way we could get them would be to give our youngsters here a chance. And it was a successful policy, and it still is. So I think by doing that and not being silly with our money, we eventually got into the Welsh Prem. We then eventually got into Europe after a couple of failed attempts in the playoffs. we eventually got into Europe, and of course, once you get that money, and of course, the secret to Europe is, and it's not a secret, but if you're lucky enough to win that first tie, which we did, we beat Crusaders, in that first tie, home and away, and a sort of unforgettable evening in Crusaders, and we beat them on penalties at the end. And if you can win that first tie, that's a massive difference between the pots of money you get. So even by playing one round in Europe, you get a lot of money. But when you're in the draw for the second round, then that's where the really big money comes in. Then we had better financial stability. And so the last 2 years has been really good. We've been able to sort of spend on the ground, get some decent players in. Of course, success breeds support, as they say. And success breeds success as well. And we've just been lucky, and Andy will know this, we've been able to not only spend on the team and the stadium, but we've been able to get really good people into the team on the board and on the media side. It's in some ways the club today, compared to even 4 years ago, is unrecognisable. And I would say the professionalism of the club, although we're still a volunteer-led club, the professionalism and the difference has been enormous, and it's a lot to do with that homegrown talent and our support. Like I said, and I'll say it again, we wouldn't be where we are without the supporters. We're just proud of being able to represent the town in the way we are.
It's that localism for me that defines a good community club. And what makes it really great about this story is, like John mentioned, those players coming into Caernarfon to help them see out the season so that they wouldn't resign for the league. That is what started them on this journey now, and it's that heritage that the club still recognises and is still committed to doing, because they recognise that it was that attachment to localism, that attachment to place, that saved the club. By the club then getting local players in, getting local people in, local talent to help develop the club in different ways, and even if they aren't local, getting people in who believe in the club's vision of localism. That, at the end of the day, like you said, Paul, is what breeds success, and for me is what makes that story special.
From a media point of view, the things that have the most effect in terms of the reach are the things that contain the local players. The fans just, they love anyone who will score goals for Caernarfon Town. Football fans are like that, but they really love it if they've got the added bonus that they're local as well. And, if we put up a photo, we've done retro shirts a few years ago, and they had, this was a little bit before I got involved, but they had former players modelling them, and it was at the time the best selling shirt they'd ever done, and there's no doubt that was why, because they're local heroes. And these players have said themselves, yes, they're semi-professional footballers, they've got day jobs, but they do have kids stopping them staring at them in the street and going, oh my god, it's Darren Bach, it's the Covey Messi, wow, I've seen him in Tesco, oh my god, so it's amazing for them. And I think it's part of what the club tries to do. We have definitely gone up a notch from these days that John and Paul have been talking about. But, in the Cymru Premier, when we go away, especially to a big game, they book a nice hotel. It's an overnight stay. There's proper food before the match and all these things to make the footballers feel like footballers as well. And, I'm not involved in the football side of things at all, but I'm sure that is a big part of the success, making them feel like proper footballers.
For me as well, but obviously when people see local lads turning out for the club, and especially in places as small as Caernarfon, like those players pulling on the badge are representing the town and the ideals and what people see as extensions of themselves and their own identity. The local club that I go and see is Lanark United, right? And Lanark's got a population of 20,000, so we're a bit bigger. There's two guys in particular that play for Lanark United. Lanark play in Tier 7 of Scotland, probably historically about Tier 8 or Tier 9. And he should be playing so much higher than he is. But he's settled here. He's got, his partner's here. He's got a job here, a career here. He's quite happy staying in the town, in and around the town and playing for the club. And, he says that's how it'll always be for him. And it's those kind of stories that bring that local pride to your football team. There's another local club called Forth who have had a lot of issues recently. None of their players are from the village. And I know it's difficult because they're a small village, but they're not doing anything to bring those players in. And attendances and results have suffered as a result. It's just having that bit of local pride actually embedded within your football club goes such a long way. But I'm glad that you mentioned what Andy does within the media, Paul, because that's what we're going to move on to next, obviously. At the beginning, I mentioned this huge rebrand, which has really kind of turbocharged what the club has brought in terms of attendances. You mentioned engagement there, Andy, as well. And I really want to touch on that because it's been really powerful in its effect, and it's great how the club has used heritage to do that. So the first question that I've actually got for you is to explain to me and our listeners who Owain Glyndŵr is and his role in this story of Caernarfon Town.
So Owain Glyndŵr would, I suppose, to the wider audience, you could compare to some kind of William Wallace, maybe, a Welsh version, around, 14th to 15th century rebel seeking Welsh independence. So similar story. So he's a famous figure in, Welsh history, especially Welsh people who are proud of their Welsh heritage. And there's also a connection to Caernarfon where in 1401, there is alleged to have been a battle on Tootil, which is I think the highest point in the town. So it overlooks the town. So it's a perfect story for us. We actually had 1401 on the back of the collar for the European shirt, which was a lovely little touch. And we've just launched a membership scheme called Club 1401. So it's all about tying into the heritage. And not everyone will know that date by just looking at it. But the whole point is that, they can dig a bit deeper and find out. And that's for local people as well, because there'll be people who've lived here their whole lives who don't know that. That's kind of how it is. But what we're trying to do now with this whole new brand is tell the story of the football club, but also the story of Wales, because like Paul said, being the Welshest club in the world is something that we sort of realised we probably are, because this is the Welshest place in the world in terms of the Welsh language. You won't find anywhere else. We've got to be a little bit careful here to not discredit other areas that they're not Welsh, because it's not the case. But this is because I know I've had this. There's a little bit of kickback. I have had this, but people come here to just sit in the street and hear people speak Welsh, because you can't do that everywhere, unfortunately. So we definitely want that. We want to carry that with us and represent it, and especially now, when we go to play in Europe after winning the Welsh Cup, we're taking the Welsh language with us. So that is not something that happens every day, because I don't know, but I don't suppose you have this being a Scot, but when we go abroad, we have to explain where Wales is and what it is. Whereas Scottish people probably don't have to do that. So for us to go to a small nation somewhere and to be able to fly the flag for Wales, and people will hear us speaking our language and they'll go, what is that? Is it Russian? Is it Italian? Is it German? What is it? No, it's Welsh. Yeah, so it's amazing for us, and we all love when that happens. So we're hoping that this will be the first time that we've taken this new badge anywhere. So yeah, it's going to be really good.
Yeah, and it features prominently on the badge as well. I mean, this entire rebrand, the entire shift towards, I guess, putting the town and the club more in touch with its heritage, also giving the club its own identity away from the town crest, we can't ignore the badge change does that, and it's done it in a really good way as far as rebrands have went in football. You see a lot of clubs opting for something a lot more simplistic that's more of a brand as opposed to anything else, whereas you can have a brand that is still reflective of the football club and puts people in touch with the community. And I mean, in terms of rebrands, it's gone very, very well. I'm obviously a huge fan of bringing heritage into any rebrand. I think the clubs knowing their heritage and actually using their heritage is important to actually connect with the fan base in a meaningful and tangible way. How has the rebrand been received, and how has it went for the club so far? Because I mean, from the outside looking in, it just looks like the club is doing everything right at the moment, and I mean, everything is kind of a success story, which must feel great.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a gamble, it could go wrong, but we did make sure from the start that we held consultations, and these were public meetings, completely open house. You didn't have to be a member or pay or anything. Anyone could come, and first of all, just say they actually decided to change the badge, because that was an option as well, to not change it. That's important, that was an option as well. It wasn't us telling them that we were going to change the badge. So we had a lot of discussions about what it might look like, and there was quite a strong sense, I think it's fair to say, that the regal style was not really something that we wanted to carry forward, the whole castle and the dragon. So we did actually take the green dragon off the old crest as inspiration for the new dragon. So for someone who hasn't seen it, it's not a Welsh dragon, it's not the red dragon on the flag or anything like that. And then it's got the sword, which is inspired by Owain Glyndŵr's sword, on a shield. So it's got a sort of fight feel to it. And we actually have got a little tagline. So the nickname for someone from Caernarfon is a cofi. So cofies and erbyn y byd. The idea behind that was in the Welsh Methodist movement. Going back many years, when would this have been? I don't know, a couple of 100 years ago maybe. I'm not too sure about that, but it was a long time ago. A big part of that was y gwir yn erbyn y byd, the truth against the world. So these people who were fighting for justice and the right to practice their religion. So we don't have a religious background in this club, not like Celtic or Rangers or something like that. I suppose Welshness is our religion, really, but we sort of borrowed aspects of that to say cofies and erbyn y byd, to say we are still here after all this time. We are Welsh, we are cofies, and we're not going anywhere. So it's kind of part of our, not just the brand and the identity, which is important, let's face it, let's be clear, to sell things and be sustainable is important, but it's also a big part of our sort of attitude. And I think we're starting, when it's only just happened, this launch is very recent, but we're starting to see already more and more people buying into it and wanting to be part of it, because I think they see us on a good day when we have the big crowds, and we're known in the Welsh systems for being one of, if not the best supported team, and people want to be part of it. And it's kind of addictive and viral. You see something and you think, I missed that one, so I'm not going to miss it next time. So Paul talked earlier about when we were in Belfast. That was the first ever European game. About 500 fans went over there. We'd never done that before. We'd never been abroad. This club had never done it before, really. They've been up to Scotland, okay, but then in Newport last week for the Welsh Cup final, there were about 1,100 people there. So it was over double. So, and that's about 140 miles away or something like that on a Sunday afternoon. So, I think definitely there are people who've seen something, liked it, wanted to be part of it. And we really wanted to make sure that our history and heritage is part of it as well, because we get all sorts of accounts contacting us from all over the world. There was a video that popped up recently. It was Spanish, I think, but I didn't understand it, obviously, but he was doing a video all about the Welsh Cup goals, and he had the highlights. But I think what he was talking about was the fact that what we're talking about now, it was the fact that we're in a Welsh language stronghold, and we've got lots of players that speak Welsh and a big fan base, the majority of whom speak Welsh. At the stadium on a match day, you'll hear so much Welsh and everywhere. So it's definitely a USP, but it's something we're very proud of.
I think it's the symbolism of it all for me. You've got this idea of a club having to tap into its local roots and really fight back to get to a position of, success like the club has now. But it's also the representative Welsh-speaking club. So you adopt elements of Welsh mythology, that rebel spirit, but also the Welsh language, this saying and moments of rebellion throughout the history of Wales as well. It just really packages it nicely into how the club has existed over the last 20 years, I think. This idea of, local people coming to help the club out of an incredibly tough place and having to fight back because of that. And for me, that symbolism and heritage is what takes a club into a new chapter of its history.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely something that we're trying to do. And I think time will tell how successful the rebrand really is. But to answer your question originally, it's been very well received. Obviously, you're going to have a few people that initially say, they just look at it and say, I don't like it. But anyone who was there during the consultation process and actually on the evening where we gave people the choice, they had a choice of 3 on the night. We actually held a vote. And the team behind it and the designers were there, and they kind of pitched it and explained why and how they got to this point, which is very important, because you're going to have a different answer if you've got a context to something to if you just go yes or no. So it's been really well received, and I think still, though, we're only just seeing the start of this. Nobody's seen this badge on a shirt yet. Nobody's seen anyone bang a goal in the top corner wearing this badge yet, and nobody's seen it all over the socials when that happens. So it's coming, but I think it's going to be a massive step forward for us. Yeah.
But like you said as well, it's the authenticity that matters, and what's authentic about this is that it was fan-led. As I touched on earlier, authenticity is huge in football at the moment, and heritage and identity all comes into that. The more authentic you are as a football club and actually engaging your fan base and tapping into their identities and their heritages, and the more successful that you can be. Who would your dream tie be going into Europe for next season?
My dream tie would be somebody that we're able to beat, to be honest with you. In all seriousness, because there were some people asked me when we were drawn to play Crusaders 2 years ago, and said, "You're disappointed not to get a better team or whatever." I said no, because I feel we have a chance to beat them, which means more revenue to the club, and which means another 2 matches. And so, if ideally somebody who we've got a really good chance of beating. Listen, I think we can beat anybody on our day. I'm not saying that. But I think if we've got somebody who, play the same level of football as we do, then we've got a really good chance. And that would excite me more than a match against another league as we had 2 years ago. I'd rather have somebody we're competitive with.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'd like to go somewhere a little bit more far flung, not just for the jolly, but to show people what we're all about. Places somewhere where nobody's ever heard of Wales, So I was looking at the list.
Any teams in England there? They haven't heard of us, have they?
No, I don't want to go there. No, but I don't know, Montenegro or Estonia, Latvia, Albania, somewhere like that. Somewhere a bit somewhere where I think Gibraltar's on there, but somewhere where they haven't heard of us, and we might be a surprise package, because I did wonder how much Crusaders would have known about us. We have highlights packages on Welsh TV, which they can get on YouTube, but did they know that? I've got no idea. Just as a fan, I wonder, did they just think, semi-professional Welsh Premier League, never heard of them? But
I agree with Paul. To get in a position where we get a chance of progressing to the second qualifying round would be fantastic.
Yeah, fair enough. Last question for you, and most importantly, what does it feel like to be Welsh Cup holders?
It's brilliant. It's something that I didn't think was going to be happening so soon after getting involved. Sounds like I'm taking credit, nothing to do with me. But when I got involved with this, no, it's nothing to do with me. But I came in to help to start working with the club and helping out as I could about 3-4 years ago. And yes, we've been pretty competitive in the Welsh League, but the teams that normally win the Welsh Cup are the teams that tend to beat us in the league. So I didn't think that it was going to be possible. So it's absolutely amazing. And the best thing is seeing the reaction in the town. Paul's been taking the cup around the place, and people are just buzzing to see it. He's got a full diary now, taking it around the place.
Yeah, I'll be taking it around schools, and I'll be taking it around schools and businesses that have sponsored us. I've already been to a couple, and what's really good is that the manager and myself, we had a call from one of the board members last Wednesday and said, listen, there's a tournament in this village, there'll be 25 primary school teams there, football teams there, and it's in the village where I work actually. And so, could you possibly take the cup there? So they could see they knew nothing about it. So we took the cup with the ribbons there, and they loved it. And it's that kind of thing we want to share the cup with everybody. But how it feels is special and emotional. As a Caernarfon Town supporter, I've always wanted us to win the Welsh Cup. For me, as a Welshman, the Welsh Cup is the World Cup. There's no other cup that compares to this. This is our cup, This is uniquely ours. If we won the World Cup, it wouldn't mean as much as winning this one. So to finally have our name on this cup means the world to me. And it is, even now, I'm quite emotional about it, to be honest with you. So, yeah, just very, very special and extremely proud of everybody, not just this year, but everybody since I joined the board 16 years ago, who worked so hard and given so many hours and blood, sweat and tears to the cause. And this is for everybody, all of those and all the supporters and all the sponsors, everybody who's helped us along the way. So, yeah, it's I couldn't feel more proud, and it's really special.
Yeah, proud and brilliant feeling. It was the first time ever in the Welsh Cup final. We had been in 4 semi-finals prior to this season. That's as far as we'd been. And not only having won the Welsh Cup, our youths as well, the under-19 development side, won the Welsh Youth Cup for the first time. So we've done a double this season. So just very, very proud and a brilliant feeling.
I can imagine. I mean, the club's just going from success to success at the moment, so I'm sure I'd speak for all of our listeners. Certainly everyone that's involved with Football Heritage, that we wish you all the best for the upcoming European campaign. Anything else that you guys want to add just before we finish up for tonight?
I just welcome anyone to come along and have a look at us if they're ever in the area or in Welsh football in general. I think it's a bit of an unknown quantity outside of, or actually inside Wales as well. We're in a unique situation where the biggest clubs play in the English system, the professional clubs. So it's a unique situation, but I would say that the quality is good, and what you get as a fan is amazing value for money. It's very affordable. So certainly I'm a product of that. I turned up a few years ago not knowing anyone and just enjoyed it and got involved. And, now I'm heavily involved, but not that everyone has to do that. But it's definitely one to watch. So come to the Oval and watch Caernarfon Town. You'll be very welcome.
You'll not be disappointed.
Aye, well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, and I say that I speak from listeners. I've never been to Wales before, but I can imagine like you must get not just like affordable, accessible football, but some really great places to go and visit, some really great historical sites, some absolutely stunning locations, well worth a visit. And like you said, Andy, obviously we've got so many like football culture publications out there now, so many photo books of people going to explore unknown quantities. Wales is something that never really seems to be touched on, and I really hope that changes soon, and I hope that clubs like Caernarfon continuing to succeed, continuing to win the Welsh Cup and perform well domestically and in Europe just brings more attention to the league as a whole. But guys, thank you very much once again for your time. This has been a fantastic conversation, and thank you very much to all of our listeners who tuned in for this episode. If there's anything else that you want to ask us, if there's any topics you want to suggest for yourself, please do get in touch. You can DM us on any of our social media, or you can email us at hello@footballheritage.co.uk as well. Please also remember to check out our exclusive Patreon feed. You can subscribe to that for £3 a month, and it gets you an additional podcast every single Thursday. That'll do us for this week. We'll see you all again in the next one. Goodbye.